Welcome to the Bladtcast, a very special Bladtcast, an episode that I'm considering on calling the Asshole Cast. And if I'm going to do a show themed around assholes, literal, figurative, and beyond, I don't know who I could possibly get on. I couldn't think of anyone. So, short of that, I thought of having on one of the nicest people that I've ever met in show business. The one, the only, never been called an asshole by anyone. Thomas J. Kelly of the Tom Kelly Show, TomKellyShow.com. Tom, thank you for being here.
I'm suddenly regretting the quick yes. I'm suddenly regretting my availability. But it works because I have been called an a-hole many times. But what you know, but other people don't know is I actually feel sad when people call me an a-hole.
Right, sometimes. but I don't mean it in that sense, you know.
Oh, I know, I know.
It's like how the Brits call each other the C word, and it means you're their best friend.
No, because it kind of, you know me well enough and long enough that people do call me an a-hole from time to time.
Look, if somebody if you're not intending on upsetting somebody, I feel the same way. Welcome to Bladtcast. I'm Christian Brad, that's Tom Kelly. But if your intended reaction is I want this person to dislike me, like a heckler would be a good example. If you're able to call out a heckler and everybody else gets on your side, you don't care if the heckler thinks you're an asshole, as long as they're not waiting for you in the alley with the baseball bat. So that's a good situation where you're not going to mind. But in general, I think most of us don't want to be thought of as an asshole.
Yeah, I'm realizing both on stage, I have this thing at home where I work very hard at being probably even nicer than you know me when I'm trying to be nice. Like I want to be nice to my nieces, nephews, my parents, and whatever. And every now and again, someone will start saying something mean to me. And I used to have to be quiet with like my drunk uncle and a few other relatives, but thank God they're dead. And and now with
that just earns you the wacky bell.
But now that I'm funny for him though, it was more of a actually when he died that also went off, bing, his time up. That said, some of the younger kids will get shots in and I will just pause and I will look at them and say, just so you know, Uncle Tommy gets paid to be mean for a living sometimes, and I'm working hard at being a nice person. You have to respect that. And so there you go. But on being an a-hole, I do have a superpower. Actually, I would say the biggest a-hole in my family. The story's just popping in my head because I see myself in this woman whom I've only probably met twice. One of my grandfather's sisters. My grandfather had about 5 sisters who, God bless, looked like the starting lineup for the New York Jets. They all could have been on the front line. Tough, big, strong, angry women.
So she's a handsome woman from the Vinny Testaverde mold, is what you're saying?
Yes, and with charm to match. And God bless, for whatever reason, they by the time I was born, around my mother, they always talked about each other, but they couldn't drive. These are all people, a generation of people who traveled halfway around the world from Italy to live 2 blocks from each other and not be talking to each other. Like it's that kind of a, and then even when they lived like an hour away from each other, it became like big fights. But anyway, Aunt Pina, Joseph, which I think was short for Josephine, might have been the meanest person on earth. She said there was a big fight over the family land in Sicily. And she said to my grandfather's brother who was dying of Parkinson's, and by the way, no angel himself, but she said to this man dying of Parkinson's, may you spend all of your money on medicine. And I just thought that was like the meanest damn thing ever for many years. And then as I get older, I find myself thinking stuff like that. And I'm like, that's my superpower, that I can't, like, I'm an X-Man with a danger. I'm an X-Man mutant with a superpower that I can't use for fun.
Right. It's a very dangerous weapon. It really is like having, adamantium claws out of your fist. In some situations, it's very useful, but for the most part, it's really going to be a problem if you try to incorporate them in your regular life.
Oh, and
Perhaps unless
I'm gonna say I'm Cyclops, but that's a bet like Cyclops is the only one I could think where he's just shooting out of his eyeballs the whole day. But I'm Cyclops out of the mouth with poison.
right. If you keep that mouth closed, nobody's going to get hurt. It's
Because
going to be fine.
adamantium claws are very useful when you're chopping a fillet.
Yeah, and you could make a kebab on them. You can just sort of hold it over the grill, but they retract, and therein lies the problem. It's interesting because I sensed the theme when I was putting together in my head what we were going to talk about, and it's really fairly simple. That's why you didn't get detailed show notes because this is not a professional operation in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know why it was actually. This might be the hardest you've ever made me laugh, and I just have this image of Wolverine with chunks of beef.
The first animated appearance of Wolverine is on an episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends from, I believe, 1981 or 1983.
Okay.
And you couldn't have him using his claws to, hurt people because they're blades. However, he does indeed have fruit, or he has food on them. And it was basically me sort of bringing that to light, and I'll see if I can find it, of course.
Please tweet
our pal Jacob Lee Downey appreciates the idea that you have a Cyclops mouth. He also wanted to know if I dressed up as Dennis Miller for Halloween. No, but Dennis dressed up as me, so I consider myself.
When this year?
No.
In past years?
Never happened, actually.
Okay.
Dominicus Saxon. Another fella told me he had a sister who looked just fine. Instead of being my deliverance, she had a strange resemblance to a cat named Frankenstein. You put so many words in there. And big shout out to Kame Egan, who says hi to Dominicus, but not to myself nor to Tom. But Kame Egan, I hope all is well in Chicagoland today. Now, the topic of one's posterior. By the way, the family friendly title of this episode is Fire in the Hole, but it really, to me, is the asshole cast, because I wanted our jumping off point to be something relatively serious, but it's something that we've both gone through recently. Tom and myself are men of a certain age, but not quite the age that some people might think we are. We're a little younger than you might think. And one of the things that I always knew is as a middle-aged man, you got to start getting a colonoscopy. You got to get that prostate checked. And in my head, for years, that was like, unless you have a family history, which thankfully I don't, 50. That's the age when you start to do it. And about 2 years ago, my doctor, Dr. Barra, lovely gentleman, known him for years, he was like, oh, no, they changed that. You should start getting them when you're 45. And I had just turned 45. And I put it up for an entire year. But eventually I had no more excuses. And I was like, you know what? I should go do it. And Tom, I know you also recently had it done. At what point did you start to go, all right, yeah, I should get this? Did you put it off like I did for more than a year, or were there circumstances that dictated you did it sooner?
I hate having things on my checklist. So the short answer was my doctor, Dr. Fox News. He's a Republican. Anyway, that's my nickname for him. We'll diverge later, but he pointed it out. And honestly, I hate having things lingering that you have to do.
Yeah.
I know that I've been blessed that I have been busier than I have been for September, October, November, with really no plans for January, February, March, April, 2023, 2024, 2025. Like I actually,
Right.
So I had a week off of light duty in the middle of a busy season. I'm like, you know what? This is the week to do it. And, my doctor, who is an osteopathic doctor, he is slow to prescribe medicine. When he prescribes, I take him seriously. And he pointed out, and if you do the research yourself, you can find this. Actually, colon cancer cases are actually down in the country right now. But the deaths have been ticking up 1% a year. And the cure for colon cancer is catching it early, and you could treat it, zap it, get it done. But the minute it takes root, you're screwed. So for me, the surprise ending or the not surprise ending is, and we'll do the jokes later, but I'm cancer free, but I have hemorrhoids. And I've had a burning in my ass here and there, and I'm like, you know what? What if that's the colon cancer? What if those are the little polyps that got to be zapped? And so that was the other. I've never quite said it like that before. So you're getting a Bladtcast, a-hole cast exclusive there. But yeah, I had a burning. Every now and again, my butthole was uncomfortable, and I'm like, oh, I just thought that was ornery, or I had tacos, and yeah, it was hemorrhoids. But then you go, what? Well, shit, if it's this other thing, you're an idiot for not doing it. And honestly, it's done. That for 90% of people who do it, you're done, and you don't have to think about it for another 5-10 years. So, yeah. So that's the real reason I did it. And then I could go into house. Actually, I'd love to hear about your prep process.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that I had heard so much about. Having worked around people that were a little bit older than me, I'd heard about it for years, and I knew what the prep entailed, and that was a big part of the reason why I didn't want to, really go through it until I had to. And it was right before my wife went back to working. She had a few weeks between shows. And, I was just like, there's no one else in my life that I feel like I can ask to drive me home from this procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my wife, she signed up for it. It's in the vows. She had to, in front of God and everyone at the Richard Nixon Library in Yorba Linda, California. She said, in not these exact words, but she said she would drive me home after a colonoscopy.
Okay, I'm going to also argue, maybe for Lucy and Felix's sake, at least for your daycare skills, she's a little bit invested in your long-term health too.
Yeah, no, I think there's that. I mean, I think at this point, she doesn't want to have to start over to find another husband. For better, for worse, this is what she's got. And it's like, oh man, all right, let's, this is a bad investment that I made. Look, a lot of people made bad investments in the early 2000s. And, this is, you just try to make the best of it. Like, how many pennies on the dollar can you get? Let's see what we can do. Let's have another couple of decades to try and grow it into something else. So eventually we find a time and we do it. And I had been warned about the prep, and, my insurance didn't really cover the prep that they wanted, but they were like, yeah, well, you can just get this over the counter stuff. And I was like, well, then why am I getting this other stuff? So it's like, it was fine. And what I would say is the way that I was warned about it, I have had much worse diarrhea after eating at Tortilla Flats in New York City. So, to me, it was just like, oh, this is just a bad Vegas buffet. Well, so a bad Atlantic City buffet, because there was a lot of it, but it wasn't painful, So the prep, I was just like, oh, this is definitely an inconvenience, but it's not what I thought. Was yours a little bit more? You went down a burning ring of fire, like Johnny Cash would say.
So here's I did 20 minutes on my podcast about the whole process. If you want to hear a less enjoyable version of Tom Kelly's colonoscopy prep, actually you don't need it because I think we're going to rehash most of the episode here. But I described it as colonoscopy prep is like putting together IKEA furniture without knowing if you put the furniture together properly until after somebody jams a camera up your ass. And for me, that is the stressful part. You just put 2 or 3 things into context for me. I really wish I talked to more friends like you before having it, because you just explained something to me that now everything makes sense. For me, I'm bad at directions. You're an old friend of mine. You know, I'm bad at making plans until I get there 5 minutes before. And that's part of why I did the colonoscopy, was I just didn't want something lingering on my things to do list. So what they gave me was a piece of paper with directions that might as well have been in Swedish for me. For reading the directions, and they were probably clearly written. I kept calling the directions the shit sheet. And basically, I guess what I'm starting to understand is two things. One, in the old days of colonoscopies, you had to drink this awful green liquid. They gave me a do-it-yourself kit, and I'm sure that's because there's in the middle do-it-yourself kit that my insurance didn't want to pay for.
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that said, the problem becomes me shopping for myself. I mean, I am 46 years old, and folks, I need a home health aide, at least for this day. And I swear, the worst part is, Christian, I'm going to sound obsessive, or, I'll play it off when I'm being all Tom the comedian like I'm lazy. I'm just not good at this stuff. And there's nobody there to hold your hand while you're going through the process. Like, I went out and they're like, all right, go buy Ducalax laxatives. Fine. Go buy 2 bottles of 64-ounce Gatorade. Couldn't find or go buy the 64-ounce Gatorade. Couldn't find the 64-ounce Gatorade. Bought,
but it had to not be the red or the blue. They were very specific. So they said clear, and it was like, well, there isn't clear, but white. I'm gonna get the white Gatorade. That's good enough.
Yeah. Ramble for a second.
Yeah, no. So I mean, and because of the dyes involved, there are reasons why you're not able to do the procedure. I still have like 3 of those in my fridge, actually. Those, yeah.
No, but then there's nobody there to like validate. And I'm like, is this clear enough? There's also, I wouldn't mind. I mean, I also got Jell-O to eat. I'm like, they're like, no, somebody must be having lots of colonoscopies on the Upper West Side. And this is an older neighborhood in New York City, because there's very little pre-made non-red Jell-O available on the Upper West Side. This must be the colonoscopy prep capital of New York City, because I had to go to 3 grocery stores to find any Jell-O that was within the parameters of what they're saying. But this is the thing. The whole time you're going through the shit sheet, I had to buy, I had to buy the bottles of the Gatorade. I bought and then it's now don't eat all day. So now you're cranky. And then I go to start assembling the materials here. And I realized I accidentally bought Ducalax suppositories, not the pills.
Oh, no.
And this is the thing. At the CVS, it was the only thing with the word Ducalax on the shelves. Because everything, all right, it's now 4:00. I'm supposed to start taking these pills like 3 minutes ago. It's now like kind of like post after the bomb is supposed to explode. You're on borrowed time. So luckily there's a mom and pop pharmacy, but the guy there is always cranky. But I went down there, got the proper pills, came back, and then and then you're mixing the fluids and whatnot, and then you're sitting there drinking. And I'll be honest, and then you have to buy a big thing of Miralax, it's called. Did you have to do that?
That's the powder, right?
So I did the powder. Yeah. It's like
Crystal Light. If Crystal Light was designed to invoke explosive diarrhea.
Yes. So my joke, if you listen to the podcast, and it did so badly on Instagram and TikTok, I'll recreate the moment for you.
Please do.
Okay. I would play the B-52's Rock Lobster karaoke song of Rock Lobster, right? Sure. And then I would sing Poop Roofie. I was mixing myself a Poop Roofie. Because I just then kept having these little jokes in my head. Because that's what it is.
Poop roofie. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. Oh my gosh.
It fit, but got nothing on both social platforms, and even my own listeners were sending angry notes like "you're being gross." That said, and I'm sitting there thinking, geez, why didn't anybody ever go to a college party where they mix the grain alcohol and Kool-Aid in a giant garbage can and just make a poop roofie? You know, like so. By the way, I'm very sad about today's show that we're not going to top Wolverine kebab claws for the rest of the day. But yeah,
that's all right. Yeah,
but getting to the end of my stress, it wasn't until then going through the steps on my podcast that I realized when I couldn't find the 64-ounce bottle of Gatorade, I bought 256-ounce or whatever. I bought 228-ounce things, and then I realized 28 times 2 was 54, and I was 10 ounces slight on the Gatorade. I didn't realize that until a day after. You know, like the whole thing became, am I doing this right? And because there were so many steps, a guy like me could make the mistake, you know, and that's where I was going crazy when I was making myself my poop roofie. You know, and there you go. But again, the good news is, but I got some great stories the more I talk to people.
Sure, yeah.
Let me go slow then. Now, the next problem I had was after drinking things according to the required steps, I found I wasn't even farting for a while.
Oh boy. Okay.
How long did it take for the thunder to hit you?
Yeah, the thunder from down under was a bit of a rumble at first, and
so it hit hard. Then it hit.
I would say, you know, it's like when there's a crack in the dam, but then the water doesn't start to come through, and there was definitely some pressure, and I was like, it's one of those things, you know, for kids who might dabble with some recreational pharmaceuticals, you might be like, well, I've already eaten one of these marijuana brownies, these pot desserts. I don't feel nothing. So let me go ahead and eat another one. And then I was just like, well, I've taken it and it hasn't happened yet. Should I take more? I didn't. And it was good. I followed the shit sheet. I'm glad you called it that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was it took a little while, and there was some discomfort, and then the walls came tumbling down. Our pal Dominicus Saxon. Glad I decided to eat lunch during this show. So am I. 100%. And Kame Egan says, so yummy. But by the way, Kame Egan liked your poop roofie. She's going to think about that every time she hears Rock Lobster now.
Yeah. So. And you know, it's funny though, just pausing for a second. There's two reasons why I'm talking about this out loud. One, I found I had no friends to talk to when I heard it was my turn. I thought I was the only oh, God bless you. Is that what?
That's Wolverine. For our visual listeners, and this is a reason to subscribe to the Bladtcast YouTube page, you can see an image of Wolverine he has basically a fruit assortment to present. And he has an Australian accent in this cartoon. And he basically says, want a piece of fruit? And that's really what that moment is. And I'm sharing that. But we'll leave him up for a little while we keep talking.
Well, you know what I love? Leave that picture up while I only share about the most vulnerable I've been in the last year.
We'll bring him back. He'll come back. No, but I understand what you're saying because you didn't have anybody to talk to about this. What I learned over the last week that a mutual friend of ours, Josh Payne, he has these done every 2 years.
By the way,
not because he needs to, but just for
confidentiality,
just for fun. Just for fun, Josh Payne has them done, you know. But no, he and so I was just like, oh, okay, that's a guy who gets it, but I didn't remember that. So I you know, but so yeah, when you have nobody to check in with, you know, it's just like. I guess, you know, I guess I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
You know?
Can we, and not to do your partner job, but could we share YouTube administrators second to last comment and then put up Wolverine too? Just because that might be the second biggest laugh of the day. And then
this one?
Yes.
That was removed during your colonoscopy. So the assortment of fruit and a small hairy Canadian who for some reason had an Australian accent in this show. Yeah, Wolverine himself was removed from my bowels. So yes.
Okay, that made me giggle too. But going to a few weird things is the YouTube version of my colonoscopy podcast did surprisingly well. It rated higher than usual, 3 times higher than usual.
Okay.
I have found that on my Instagram, sharing, and I make fun of these people who do this. I shared a picture of me pre-op or pre-procedure.
Yeah.
And God bless, that has more likes than me being on vacation. There are more people happy to see me having a camera jammed up my ass than going to the Bahamas. And
I mean, if you put it that way, and it's an either or. I could only text you one. I'm like, I know what the Bahamas looks like. I've been there. Let's go ahead and go with the posterior cam.
Yeah, and then it's just funny because then you're talking to some people, and they're like my friend Cindy Sorensen, who is a high school buddy of mine. She says, "Don't worry, Tom. I get them all the time too. Blah blah blah. It's gonna be so fun when you wake up in a room with 30 farting people behind a curtain." And that was 1, not my experience, and 2, not the advice I needed at that moment. But I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you what kept me calm. I drank an extra glass, and I was starting to hit a point where, nothing's hitting. The storm wasn't coming. My buddy Chris Delenik, a college buddy of mine, gives me a holler, and he is, and I'm like, Chris is a occupational therapy professor. His wife is a doctor. And I'm like, Chris, I'm a little nervous. I'm on hour 4 to prep here and nothing's happening. And he's like, Tom, he's laughing at me. He's like, Tom, be patient. It's going to come. It's going to come. And then he told me a great story that I will share with you. He had an aunt and uncle in the family, married to each other, who decided to get their colonoscopy on the same day.
It's romantic.
And the logic was they could do the prep together. And the logic was they only had to inconvenience their child once, who was a teacher and couldn't take days off randomly for this sort of stuff. So they only had to inconvenience their child once. It actually was a very logical idea. And then they might have hit this point where they both say, hey, I don't have to poop. You don't have to poop. I'm bored sitting here in the house. Let's go to Walmart.
Oh, no.
And apparently their aunt and uncle both may or may not have pooped themselves at Walmart. And also then couldn't leave their respective bathrooms.
Yep.
Because that's when the hurricane was coming.
So they both Rokered themselves. If you remember the clip of Roker going to the White House.
That man was very nice. I'm trying to forget that. I'm trying not to make that the defining story of that man's 30-year career or 50-year career, whatever the hell it is. And then it's funny, while he's telling this story about them pooping in Walmart, that's when I had to poop. So on that 40-minute phone call, it wasn't thunderous. Yeah. It wasn't with great urgency. I pooped 3 times. And I think the other thing we're giving, a useful piece of information to your listeners and viewers is you have to get yourself to the point where you are pooping clear water before the procedure.
Yep.
And that's something, like I was still worried because there was still dirt coming out of the pipes the next day.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the right way to say it. So again, it's it's funny. I don't go on vacation much because I hate packing.
Sure.
And that's what this is. It's packing, and it's like
it's really a lot of unpacking.
Okay, yeah. So I hate the process of unpacking and realizing I forgot my contacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
your contacts could have ended up there. You don't know.
Well,
But
and that, you're making wise ass remarks.
I am. That's
But
true.
there was a part of me that was disappointed that I didn't find like an army doll I swallowed in the 70s, or that there wasn't a little army figurine or something, a little Spider-Man
Like
head.
like all the gum that I was warned to not swallow. That because it doesn't that if like just an entire Bazooka Joe factory just kind of poured out, and I was like, wow, I really should not have swallowed that.
Yeah, I was really hoping that on one of the poops I would be ready to flush and go, oh, that's where that went.
Yeah,
There
right,
are my
exactly.
keys.
Uh,
And it's funny, you and I laughing about this out loud in public. Again, hoping it's useful to the millions of Bladtcast listeners that they feel like
billions, thank you, billions.
billions.
Thank you.
But here's where you hope it's useful. Yeah, so that like when people talk to each other, and this is the beautiful thing is there's a lot of people out there. The problem with the advice I got before, there were a lot of people saying, it's the best thing ever. It's the best sleep you ever had. The best sleep you ever had. And then there's another chunk of people like, oh, it's the worst thing ever. And the reality is it's right up, pardon the pun, it's right up the middle.
Right up the middle.
Right. Pun not intended, but it was like, all right. I actually have one thing. If you want to ramble for a second, I'll reach for it. It's over on the sofa.
Sure.
But I don't know if you had this experience. I was told as a comedian and a creative person to bring my notebook that I will be the most creative I've ever been when coming out of the fog.
Interesting.
And I brought a notebook and took notes and have not looked at those notes until now.
Oh my gosh. So that's going to be another Bladtcast exclusive. And, the reason why I thought it was important to talk about this is, and I'd been thinking about it. I think I did it back in July. And the idea really was, I think that this is just something that should be normalized, even though it is a very abnormal event to go to attend and plan around. The idea that, you're getting a Nikon up the pooper, as it were. But it is a fairly simple procedure. And it, for most of us, like I had it done and I don't need to have it done for another 10 years. They told me it's great. Yeah. They were able to, they didn't find anything. And it is so simple, but there is a little bit of a stigma about it. One of the public figures that I always hear about is the metal singer Ronnie James Dio. He was the second singer in Black Sabbath, and he had the band Dio. I'm talking about Ronnie James Dio. Tom, he died from colon cancer, and his doctor said if he had gone to the doctor even a year or two before he started to feel really bad, he would have been fine. And so, it's like that's what he has a foundation, his wife carries on. And it's just like, yeah, you really, if you do this, most of us can catch it early. And even if you have any of these problems, you'll be fine. Just get the screening. Don't be afraid of it. And, it's not very rock and roll. It's not very metal, but, and so it's just one of those things that I've heard that anecdote a fair amount over the years is that he would have been fine. And so that's kind of my whole point in talking about it, because I know that we have plenty of Bladtcast listeners who are under 50, but even a few who might be over, and maybe you haven't. And it's just like, my point is that it really wasn't a big deal because the thing itself, I mean, it was over like that. First of all, the actual passage of time was very brief, but I was out of it the whole time. And I was not feeling particularly creative. I'm glad I didn't have a notebook with me.
Well, I'm glad. And after looking at the notes, neither was I, apparently.
I love this. And by the way, I know you'll appreciate this comment from Cami Egan. What a shit show, pun intended.
Okay.
And, we'll bring Wolvie back for this part of the story.
No, and so I was told you might write funny jokes, you might come up with brilliant ideas, and I knew someone who regretted not bringing a notebook. I'm going to say I have empirical, physical proof that I was wrong. First sentence, they said to write post-colonoscopy notes. Second sentence, actually, this is good for insurance purposes, and I forgot about this till right now. IV got pulled out as raising the bed. Holy cow, memory
Oh.
popped into my head.
Yikes.
They wheeled me. Actually, you know what? Maybe there was a weird form of creativity in these moments here. So thought number one was to write notes. Second note was, you're right before the procedure, they put the needle in my arm for the IV for the anesthesia.
Yeah.
And they lifted the bed and it fell out.
Jesus.
And I caught it. The nurse, the anesthesiologist, and the nurse missed it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, they put the needle back in, but
they put it back in. But
luckily, I was aware enough to say, you guys, the needle just came out.
Yeah.
That part might have bothered me. Next sentence, which is hilarious. You remember when we were pages and I worked at Dateline NBC? Right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote flashback to working, and I worked on a piece that never aired about deaths during home office surgery.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And I wrote down the names of the two producers, a woman, Sarah Carlson, a woman, Deanna DeMoro. And that was before Joan Rivers died. That's the other reason why I didn't bring a camera. I was going to be a comedian. I was going to Ryan Reynolds it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be facetious, die, and then have me being a jackass subpoenaed in trial when my estate is suing what's left of this doctor.
Yeah.
You know,
right. Yeah, exactly.
But then the notes get less and less creative. The fourth note was, call the union on a non-warm-up. Call the union about an issue. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
Next note was, a girl I know down in Florida is a bridesmaid I now 12 times. I want her to start guest writing for my old website, IHateWeddings.com.
I mean, you could just give her the domain at this point, you know?
Yeah, I actually redid the website. I probably should. Next note was, glad this is over. And then the next note was, why do I like tall blonde women? Next note was, did I do the prep right? Next note was, which has turned into I guess I got one joke out of this. I hate putting together IKEA furniture.
See, that's funny. I'm glad that stuck with you.
So we got that one. And then the second to last note is, nothing I've written was incredibly creative. And then the last note, I don't know what this means. It says, I want a green light. I
think it means that you want to be able to go home.
Maybe.
Or if you want to transpose it to the stand-up stage, you know how they hold up that light when your time's over. You probably felt like, you know what? I've done my time. I'm Tom Kelly. Can I please leave?
And that's about how I felt, you know, and it's funny. I'm glad they told me you couldn't drive home. I felt like kind of drunk, you know.
Did you do it in the city, or were you somewhere, were you out on Long Island where you had to be driven home?
So the one big risk, the one big dumb decision I made that worked out in my favor was I do all my medical stuff at my parents' house on Long Island.
Sure.
An hour away from where I live in New York City, for those of you who don't know the area. I was thinking of getting a hotel room there because I knew I could have stayed at my parents', but I just felt listening to mom downstairs blaring CNN would irritate me while I was fasting. And I also did not want to be in a house where there was food. The nice thing about me being on the Bachelor diet, I mean, that was actually probably a harder challenge for you, being the father of two and married, compared to me. If you looked at my fridge, you would think I was prepping for surgery today.
Yeah, I've seen your fridge, and yes,
it's clean, but it's really
so clean. It's so clean. I agree.
So that said, I prepped here, and I was going to take the Long Island Railroad where they have bathrooms, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to spend a few days on Long Island. I want my damn car.
Yeah,
I took the car, and the traffic gods were good to me. There was no more, and the bowel gods were good to me. I would say I only took one last poop after that. And there was that fear of, what if thunder comes? Am I going to be Walmarted? You know, and to be fair, it was kind of reckless to do it that way and go against the plan after hearing the Walmart story.
Yeah, that Walmart story, I think we can, if none of us take anything away from this show, there's two things to take away. One, the Walmart story. Two, how practical it is to have Wolverine on your catering staff when you have any kind of fancy dress party. I want to circle back. I was talking about Ronnie James Dio, and if only he had gone to a doctor, if only he had done a colonoscopy. And Kame Egan really nailed it with citing the title of a well-known song. It's a rainbow in the dark. Bless you, Kame Egan. You got the bell for that one. Very nice.
Oh, God bless you, Kame Egan, indeed.
Yeah. So, but the point that I'm making is that it's like one of those things that you kind of get yourself worked up over, and it wasn't that big a deal, especially like when it was over. In the moment, there is that, you know, the where the insurance let me go to do this was, I don't know, like 40 minutes away. So there was this nervousness of, am I going to make it? You know, there was nothing left to come out. It was fine. I went once before I went in just because I'm like, let me just make sure there's nothing. But I didn't, it wasn't like an urgent, like, uh-oh, we're gonna have to take a pit stop.
Did your wife Heather drive you there?
Yeah, she drove me there and drove. She actually she couldn't wait in the waiting room just to, I don't know, COVID
or whatever.
So she had a lovely morning at Starbucks working on her laptop while I was, you know, just kind of laying there and having a less fun morning.
Do you listen to Stern still?
I listened to his interview with Bruce Springsteen, and the last time I listened was about a year ago when he had Mick Jagger on. So
in between, and you and I are kind of doing this on our own now. Martin Short and Steve Martin did an interview within the last 2 or 3 years, but I've only just heard it recently.
Okay.
And Martin Short talked about being of a certain age, and his line was, and I could not tell if he was being real or not, but that he, Tom Hanks, and a couple of guys were having colonoscopy prep parties.
I know that this is actually true because my old boss, Dennis Miller, who I try not to mention more than once an episode, but it's come up now. Martin Short and Tom Hanks are like two of his best friends in the world. And I don't know that he's done it with them. I don't think he was on the same schedule for when to do it, but he did mention, I think he mentioned it on the radio, just that like legitimately this is their thing. Yeah. He may or may not have done it with them. I actually don't remember, but I remember him talking about it. Yeah.
And you think about the logic of it, especially if you're young, on an underinsured or whatever, how great would it be to hire a party chef who could do the mix for us?
You know, who could serve you the items? Why, of course, it would be Wolverine,
the Wolverine kebab. I can't wait to go out to California to some sort of an event at the Bladtcast house and get myself a Wolverine kebab. That better be served.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have a new house by the next time we're out here, so we're moving about a mile away. And
is that the dream is happening?
The new house is happening, yeah.
And
we've already bought the house.
Congratulations, man!
The sellers are renting it back from us while they get their affairs in order, as it were. But yeah,
way to lock in on a decent interest rate, and way to congratulations. I know you've been hot for this for a while.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll have my own office is like in the back of the garage. My wife will have an office in the body of the house, but I can actually finally properly decorate for podcasting from home. I thought I was only going to be doing it for a couple weeks. I've had 2 years. There's no excuse really for, you know, not having anything better than what's behind me. Well, but in any case,
are we going? But here's the real question: are you going to build an office, or are you going to build a podcasting studio?
No, it's going to be an office. It's funny because the seller works in producing podcasts, and he does it out of that space. It's not soundproof, but it's not attached to the house. So
wait, the old owner podcasts.
Yeah, the old owner produces podcasts. I don't know that he hosts one, but there
will be a separate podcasting studio there.
Yeah, but it's also going to be my office. And then the one thing is that this is Los Angeles, and this guy doesn't have a TV on the wall. I'm like, how do you have a standalone office and not have a TV in there for, distractions. But
He probably actually gets stuff done. The
yeah,
difference
which
between
that's not why I have an office. I'm gonna have an office to get away from my family. Let's be honest. But I'll have to go back into the house to use the restroom. However, I believe I'll be getting a college dorm fridge in there somewhere. So
Will you? And if it's just like my fridge, it'll be clean with nothing in it.
right, exactly.
But you'll have the privilege of knowing you have
Yeah.
it.
So
I hope that we could talk again about something that's. I hope I don't have to wait for a medical procedure to get invited back on the show.
No. By the way, Dominica Saxon wanted to know if if the new house has a murder basement. This is indeed what we call the murder room because it is soundproof at the back of this garage. There is no murder basement, but I will still be in the garage. So there's that. And Cam Egan says, congrats on the new digs. They're going to buy a new place in the spring. And yeah, I think I'm going to probably just invest in like the green screen curtain. Yeah, I think that I felt bad about asking to have you on for a little while because you were on a bunch of times in a short span because you were out here a couple times. I was out there. We did a couple shows.
It worked.
Yeah.
But I was running out of I think your audience was bored of me. Is that fair?
Well, my audience has been bored of me for at least 508 of these 510 episodes. But I also pumped the brakes on the Bladtcast for a short amount of time just for when I could schedule episode 500 with John Lovitz. So that he was able to do it, but he needed a few weeks and I didn't want to, I had to. So like I did 498. There was a couple weeks plopped, pun intended, plopped 499 out there and then eventually got to 500 and then we ramped back up. But the summer had an unintended hiatus a little bit while I waited to get to 500.
So it's funny you say that. I was thinking of you this week and if I don't say it enough, for better and worse, I've always thoroughly enjoyed your podcast, and two, you've at least been, I hate the word inspiration, but definitely a sounding board for ideas. And you've been very kind guiding me through my process. I am coming up on episode 250 this week, and I just edited what could be 249 or 250. And I've decided, you know what? I don't want to stop the podcast for a while because I feel like I will lose the herd if I stop. So
you know what? I think I did a little bit.
Yeah.
The
herd come back.
It wasn't huge, but it's a gradual ramp back up, and it wasn't there for a little while. And I think people apparently, devastatingly to me, they weren't really looking for it. And when it wasn't there, they didn't mind so much. And numbers were down. Obviously, 500 has John Lovitz. It was a big one. We've had a couple of other things. And it's definitely gone back up. When we do like movie review episodes, people tend to seek those out. But at first, I mean, it was like a third of what the numbers were before I slowed it down. So my advice is don't slow it down. And I hadn't in years since, I don't know, probably about 2017. I very rarely missed a week. And then this was like probably 3 weeks that I didn't do. And then, like, I don't know, there were a couple, it was like a total of a month, but not consecutive.
So it's funny. Our old friend Jay Capres says we should do shorter episodes and release them every day.
He might not be wrong. I don't have the discipline to do that. I don't know how to, like, this conversation was going to be like, 20 to 30 minutes and it's been 47 minutes, like this part of the conversation. So I don't know how to do the bite-sized chunks. You are very good at that. You have the discipline and you realize like, if I have this conversation with, somebody else that we know, like if you talk to David Brody, you're going to carve it up into a couple episodes, don't cheat yourself of content that's good for the sake of having a 20-minute show. But don't be afraid to have 2 20-minute shows instead of, throwing too much of it onto the floor.
So, yes, and that's where I'm at. And by the way, I don't know if you want to end the podcast and then we could talk about podcasting. I don't know if I'm just screwing you up by making.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
But my thought was I hit a point where, one, I think of you every time I post the episode. I just love how you dump it when you're done, which, by the way, I guess relates back to the colonoscopy episode. But I have trouble. I'm trying to line up the YouTube release with the audio release, and then I often press the wrong button and screw up the date. And then something comes out early, something
Yeah.
comes out too late. And I find that incredibly frustrating. That said, I think my new thing is I'm aiming for a 20-minute podcast. And then at the 20-minute mark, I'll decide, we're going to keep going. But I feel like if I know I have an hour, I won't get into the, to use the colonoscopy theme, the heavy poop quickly.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Dominicus Saxon says, the only Bladtcasts I miss are when you do it during nap time, which I always apologize about that. Jacob Downey says if he misses a week, he loses 50%. And Jacob also says, I like long form, windy podcast about Yeah, I realized I read it wrong. Windy podcast about colonoscopy, and Cam Egan with a fizz plop plop. But plop plop fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Alka-Seltzer.
Thank you, Cammy. By the way, what you realize now that you and I have spent on this podcast more time talking about our respective colonoscopies than we spent getting the colonoscopy.
Yes. Yeah. Not more time than we did doing the prep.
And that's
you reminded me that I had to have like Gatorade for breakfast that morning, because we could drink things. I think I could drink tea, which surprised me because it had caffeine in it, but I can't actually remember. But like I drank I didn't even have the powder anymore, but I drank one of those Gatorades just because like I needed something, and I think my wife made breakfast for the kids that day. So.
And I think you're going to find, actually, I'm going to have colonoscopy leftovers today for dinner. I have broth.
Okay, that's not what that sounded like. The colonoscopy leftovers sounds like something totally different. And something that you perhaps don't want to put in some broth.
All right.
It makes its own broth.
And I'm out. I have nothing interesting. I am not going to top that. Nope. And there's the topper.
Yeah, there's Wolverine.
There's the topper. Wolverine.
Well, look, I wanted to just spend a couple minutes on, the idea of putting this together and this conversation, which I thought would be, sort of a fun, lighthearted way to make anybody who is apprehensive about getting one. If even one person messages me that like, I wasn't going to get one for a few years, I did. Thank you. And then I hope they followed up with, and of course, everything was fine, but I'm glad I had it done, but it did make me think that there's so many assholes in the news right now. Like we're talking about literal, but, in some cases it's people like, I don't know. How is anybody still in on Kanye West a month ago? Like, how had people been like, oh yeah, no, he's used up any goodwill that he had. I mean, I was never a fan of his music, but I could understand that other people liked it. But then he started making music that even his fans didn't like. And, him trolling Pete Davidson was a little bit funny at first. Then it that went too far. And then it's like, oh yeah. And also I'm proudly anti-Semitic. Oh, okay. So now's the time to tap out on his ugly ass shoes and his unlistenable music that actually, like, he put out a song within the last few years that basically goes shoopity doop, shoop doop, shoopity doop or something. I'm not even really making that up. And I was just like, well, this is a guy that, like, when he stormed the stage at the MTV Awards and interrupted poor innocent Taylor Swift. That was probably the time to go like, well, fuck that guy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need him in our life anymore. But boy, did he get another decade plus, and
never mind. And like I talked about this on the podcast a while back.
And where do people find that podcast, by the way?
Oh, TomKellyShow.com, which, listen, at this point, if the 5 people here have not subscribed, they're not going.
Hey, look right above us. There's a 6 and then a 1 from Facebook. So I think that's 7. Okay.
What, there's 7 people here? Okay.
Oh, you don't see that. Okay. I don't see that. Yeah.
But whatever it is, and listen, there's also a chunk of people who listen to this later on the Apple and the Spotify.
That's most of my people. Yeah.
That said, without now talking about how successful you are, I've been saying this for a while. Kanye is a bully, I mean, and I'll build backwards. First of all, I'll go back and forth on what free speech is and whether or not you have a right to be anti-Semitic and talk about it. But what I don't think you have in life is a right to go DEFCON 4 on a race. That is not just being anti-Semitic. That is encouraging violence. I mean, that's not even like, I know you talked about Kyrie, and I haven't followed the Kyrie story enough to comment on it, but I will be able to intelligently say DEFCON 4 is a military term, and to say to do that on a race or creed of people, that's intolerable. But I'm going to argue we've encouraged his bad behavior going all the way back to 2004 with Mike Myers, when he yelled out, George Bush doesn't care about black people. Listen, I'm not I have issues with the Bush administration, but the man, I think, was as close to a decent human being as you can get, and actually has done a lot for African causes after his administration ended. He cared about black people. He screwed up on Hurricane Katrina, or the aid wasn't getting there quick enough, whatever you want to call it. Fine, let's put that on the side. He then wrestled a microphone out of the hand of a younger woman to say the younger woman didn't deserve the award she got at what was then the high point of her life. Now, we don't feel bad for Taylor Swift because it's fun to hate on her because she's beautiful and perfect and rich. And if she is single, I'd love to go on 2 dates, just enough for you to get another song.
I was just imagine if she wrote a song about you, it would be worth it to be in the song.
Oh my God. And listen, she's charming. Anyway, put that on the side. And then listen, and then after all of that crazy thing, wacky thing here, wacky thing here, she married a Kardashian. I felt I had no sympathy for Kim Kardashian during all of that because we saw him abuse a woman. We all saw him abuse a woman. Maybe, I mean, he physically took something out of somebody's hand that did not belong to him. That is a form of abuse, and then going to the Pete Davidson trolling, I enjoyed it slightly because,
like I said, at first, it was a little bit funny at first.
The nickname Skeet, actually, the nickname Skeet is funny, and then you have some sympathy for a second because you're like, okay, Pete is banging his ex rather publicly, but then it became,
and let's be honest, better than he ever did. Let's just assume that that's the case, because of the rumors about Pete Davidson. That he's got a tree trunk down there. Look, I'm just saying, these are rumors. These are alleged.
These are alleged.
Allegedly.
And I think to your point, I mean, listen, in the age of canceling, when we cancel for far, far less than the two things I'm talking about, or let's at least say the Taylor Swift incident and then DEFCON friggin' 4, and he's still going. And listen, and going crazy because I have been following, while I don't know, I agree with the bigger problem. I don't know. I think we've attacked a couple of celebrities that didn't deserve to be attacked in certain ways.
Sure.
But on the other hand, if you pause and listen to what the Jewish people are going through in America, anti-Semitic crimes are up. The number of, and I can't believe this is statistically relevant, but that there are 15 million Jewish people in the world. I find that number to be low. But then someone points out that Kanye has 18 million followers on Twitter, which just makes me say, why doesn't Israel set up a Twitter account?
Cami Egan points out Kanye is a dumbass, but the news media are to blame because they keep giving him a platform. And I don't disagree, that you make these monsters, you feed these monsters a little bit. And, I always want to give credit to a great pal of mine, a one-time co-host, Roxy Stryer, who people know from The Tomorrow Show, was a show that I did, and she was at AfterBuzz TV. She is always very vocal when there's any kind of anti-Semitism. She is a delightful Jewish young woman from Boston, and anytime she has an opinion of anything she has an opinion on, she will screenshot and then show us how many messages it's followed up by some variation on "shut up, you dumb Jew bitch," some variation on that, and it's like, I think that's what you do, is like, no, shine a light on it, just like, these people, like, that's where they go to immediately. You don't like this thing. Well, that's what I think of you,
And I don't know what the answer is. The problem now with this age of everybody as a TV channel, like the Kyrie thing. I want to be careful because the man freaks me out and I don't know enough to talk intelligently.
Sure.
But there's part of me then that wants to read more about this movie that everybody says is anti-Semitic so I could know if it's anti-Semitic.
Well, if you look up a description of the movie, it's basically the idea that it equates, I think, Judaism with being a Satan worshiper. And then also it is a very anti-Holocaust narrative. And the thing about Kyrie Irving, it is, look, athletes have a lot of dumb opinions. And, usually somebody explains you have to apologize for this. But to be the Brooklyn Nets, so that arena in Brooklyn, I mean, just think about the neighborhoods around there, how far away is it from Crown Point, etc.
Crown Heights, yeah.
Crown Heights, yeah, sorry. And all these things are and so that's a bigger problem in that they I mean, look, he didn't want to get vaccinated, so he didn't get paid for home games because he didn't play. He'd only play on the road at some point. That's a different issue. This is an issue where it's like you have to show that there's not a tolerance for this. Now it's like he's going to be suspended without pay for no less than 5 games. Okay, so 6, maybe 10. And it's, I think that look, people can make mistakes and feel remorseful and then, go on and really learn from it. But sometimes you also have to set an example. And I was just very surprised that people have been let go from teams and other organizations for much less than this, and given opportunities to apologize earlier than he did, which was today, earlier opportunities he didn't really take. So, so that's like, to me, if you're an anti-Semite, this is a crazy idea, Tom. I think if you're anti-Semitic, you're an asshole. And that's the whole point of this podcast, episode is, and it's like, it can be hard for me. Look, we both grew up in New York. I live in Los Angeles now. You don't think about how widespread those opinions are. And, it's, and, the people can point out, it's like, and because it's such a real problem, there's, jokes and things that, that also aren't funny because, there's the actual problem. And you try to, just take it all in. You just try to listen, basically. What hurts people when they hear it? Okay, good to know, And so I don't know. That's really what I thought when I was thinking that obviously it was the way to bookend this hour or so conversation we were going to have.
And if I could just tag on that for one last thought, everything you just said, I agree with 1,000%. And what terrifies me about the world, and yet enables my career, is like, it's funny. I am a absolutist on freedom of speech, or I used to be. I don't know where I am anymore on certain things right now, but in theory, I'm an absolutist on freedom of speech. You can say whatever the hell you want, but that opinion was formed before we created technologies where we could magnify that. I always believed that there would be checks and balances with freedom of speech so that if you said something wrong, it wouldn't go out that far. And now you have a guy like that who, if he said that stupid opinion after a game, the sports reporters, the Daily News guy, ESPN would be like, all right, we're not going to share that around, and someone will fix him privately.
Yeah. Right.
Now it's like, boom, out to the people. And that's dangerous. Listen, let's own something here. You and I are two, comedians, moderately successful, whatever you want to call it, comedians with no gatekeepers.
International superstars. That's the term you're looking for both of us.
Or that, talking to an audience about medical procedures for a second.
Yeah.
That's great because we think we're on the right side of history. But what happens when people on the wrong side of history have these tools, plus a talent? And that's a problem with America for years and you hit it with the Kanye point, and you just hit it again with Kyrie, is we tend to forgive people who are good at something and making us money.
Yeah.
And at what point do you have the courage to stand up for what's right and risk losing the ability to feed your family?
Hey, Mel Gibson's back. He was in the doghouse for a little while, but he's officially back.
What's Melon now? The sequel to whatever this movie Kyrie's pushing?
Yeah. That's Apocalypto 2. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that look, I know that I know that it's about to be election day, and that's a very divisive time, and people throw their opinions out very strongly. I would hope that somebody who's like, okay, I like these person's politics, but oh my gosh, they have a lot of anti-Semitic things to say. I hate the other person, so maybe I just don't vote for anybody. Sometimes you might leave something
You know,
blank. You
I
know,
I don't want to. So right now in New York, I'll practice the opinion on you, and we'll see if I put it somewhere else. I am torn between Kathy Hochul, a woman who may or may not be politically corrupt financially on certain things,
sure.
a woman who has failed to acknowledge that changes in bail laws in New York State may create environments where I feel unsafe. She's candidate number one. And candidate number two, with whom I may agree with on bail laws, didn't think the 2020 election was real and voted to not.
Right. That's you're talking about that's Zeldin, is that right? This is
Yeah,
for governor of New York State. Yeah.
for governor of New York State, and he also may not be, though he seems to have backpedaled on where I stand on a woman's right to choose. And there's one other thing I didn't like about him that I can't remember. But basically, I'm torn. The one sentence punchline is, do I vote for the woman who doesn't think crime is real, or do I vote for the guy who doesn't think the election is real?
Right. Yeah.
And
And it's and that's the problem.
yeah,
It's
that's my one sentence.
I mean, that's it was 2016 that South Park boiled it down to what was it? You vote for a douche or shit sandwich. Either way, your options are terrible.
Douche,
I
douche.
was thinking, you always, yeah, exactly. I've been a douche guy since way back, but yeah, and in Los Angeles, there's a mayor's race that I'm just like, oh, they're both terrible for a lot of reasons. I don't live in the city of Los Angeles. I live in Burbank. I don't have to worry about it. I was just thinking about that this morning watching, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, she's terrible too. Oh yeah, I don't have to vote for them, so it's fine. I don't get the opportunity because I don't live in the city of
But
Los
it does
Angeles.
affect you, man. But listen, the same thing with New York City and the suburbs where I'm at. The problem spread, and and it does affect your property value. And then I do like the big ending for me on my politics for today
Yeah.
is if I post that joke I just told. I'm afraid of what even Pandora's box it would open now. I'm at a point right now where I'm even afraid to express myself on certain opinions for fear that, like when you go up the middle, you get attacked from both sides.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. For years, I have not usually. I've rethought and just not posted on any platform a lot of political leaning thoughts because I'm just like, it's not worth the headache. It's like to me, this is funny what I'm talking about, and it's an idea that's funny, but nobody wants to see that. Here's a picture of my kids in their Halloween costumes. I'm just gonna leave it there. You know what I mean? It's tough.
yeah,
And we should all be like Jacob and vote for the colonoscopy
saw that.
instead.
Yeah.
That's what we should do. I'm sorry, and I wanted to let you finish your thought though, Tom.
No, and that's about it. Like, I mean, like right now, and then you get into two. Where is the danger of having opinions? This is a funnier side one. I'll expand on the story when I get the job or don't get the job. But I'm up for a job working with a celebrity, and I may or may not have had strong opinions about that celebrity in the year 2009 expressed on Twitter.
Have you deleted those tweets?
After I failed the background check, yes. And
okay.
no, and then you sit there like, you know what? I'm hesitant to delete all my Twitter, but I think I'm going to eventually just nuke it. But the problem is I don't want to nuke it until I have a transcript of what I have said.
Yeah.
Like like they were supposed to mail me an archive and it never came. But the point is just that like, at this point, if I say I liked Trump on this, does that vilify me from ever working for Biden when I voted for the guy? But if I said, oh, I like Donald Trump's hair one day, I don't know, whatever the hell it is, if you have that one thought expressed in 2009, am I in trouble? I don't know.
No,
but
I mean, and that's yeah. Look, I have a friend who she posted a video. She she ran into Kanye at a restaurant. And boy, did she pick the wrong time to post that picture. She eventually took it down because she was just like, I wasn't endorsing what he said. I just thought it was, it was like I had been a fan for so long, and I'm like, yeah, but you might want to keep that one in your back pocket for a little bit longer. But I don't know. It's it is a very tough time. It's a very absolutist time. I would say that your joke that you referenced, if you post it, you will likely get a response of, oh, so this opinion about one of the candidates actually doesn't matter which candidate, doesn't matter which opinion. That's okay to you? Question mark. So
yes, and I was trying not to use those words because I don't want to get quoted on certain things.
That's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah. It's gonna be, what's the matter, Tom? Do you support shootings in Shirley, Long Island? Because this guy Zeldin, if he were probably a little less douchey, does have the ultimate anti-crime story, except that he's just a little bit of a weirdo. And he actually, nobody's really celebrating. He would be the first Jewish governor of New York,
which is crazy, by the way. I mean, when
hard to believe. Yeah. I could ramble all day. Can I tell you how much I love doing this show, by the way? One, it's always good to catch up with you. And then two, it's nice to have the peanut gallery and the little private, the little chat on the right. It does.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I like doing the show to start. I like doing it live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, so that I can have this interaction. But then also, I mean, the real focus is on the audio version. Dominica Saxon says, all I know about politicians is when they aren't kissing babies, they're stealing their lollipops. I agree.
Is that a quote? Is that from somewhere?
I feel like I've heard that idea. Just the idea. As soon as the cameras are turned away, you'll steal that lollipop. Not even because you like lollipops, because you can. But someone who's never stolen a lollipop from a baby is my pal Tom Kelly. And Tom, we will have you back. We won't wait for another major procedure. But I do appreciate you recording a very brief video that was included as part of the montage for our 500th episode. You mentioned that you would do something that I can't do, which is keep it short, which I thought was very funny, by the way. I thought that was great.
My God. And by the way, can we close with Tom Kelly singing Poop Rupee? I'll send you that video.
Oh, yeah. Please do. Yeah.
Here comes the text. Poop Rupee. Poop Rupee. Poop Rupee.
Tom, people who want to subscribe to the show, keep in touch with you, how do they do those things?
So ladies and gentlemen, it is TomKellyShow.com is the gateway to all things Tom Kelly. You can find the Tom Kelly Show podcast on YouTube. You could also find it on Apple and Spotify and all those things, and across the board on social media as Tom Kelly Show. And if you're feeling generous, Venmo Tom Kelly Show.
And you'll hear our pal Farad Muhammad say all of this at the end of the audio version, but you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Please like the Bladtcast on Facebook at Bladtcast, Bladtcast. I was never verified, so I get to keep $8 a month because there's no check mark to pay for. And that's the real victory for me. I was never verified, so I don't need to make any hard decisions. Tom, great to chat with you as always. We will talk to you again soon. And for all of you, we'll see you next time on the Bladtcast, which I believe will be our Black Panther Wakanda Forever review episode. So please tune in for that and tune in soon. Goodbye.
Bladtcast.